Undertaker has revealed his WCW pay. So
I read that.
Yeah. Speaking on his 6 feet under, I don't know if it's a podcast or it's a Patreon thing. Undertaker recalled asking for a raise in WCW. Here's the quote.
Yep.
The meeting was to renegotiate my contract. I had asked for the meeting because my contract was coming due. I was on the standard entry level contract, which is maybe $1,200 a month. So what's that? 60.
No.
You
read it farther. It's a week.
Oh yeah. This is 1989, early 1990. He corrects himself.
Hell, that'd been like $300 a week.
I know. That'd be a pile of shit. I wouldn't have stayed there. I was at the point in my career where I was a WCW guy. I enjoyed the product better. Being from Houston, we didn't get a lot of WWF until Vince McMahon went to cable. I was more drawn to guys like Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Rock and Roll Express, Road Warriors, and those guys. I was happy.
And Dutch Mantell, he left me out.
And you weren't there in '89.
Yeah, I was there with him.
You were there in 1990. You were in USWA in '89.
Whatever. I was with him in WCW for a while, but he wasn't going as the Undertaker. That's where he went to WWE.
Yeah. You hate my nitpicking, don't you? But it's
no, but you're right. But I've been concussed several times.
Okay, Rock and Roll Express, Road Warriors, and Dutch Mantell, who would turn up a year later. I was happy there and where I wanted to be. I wasn't going in to ask to break the bank. I knew it was going to be my second year with the company. I just wanted a little bump in pay. I went in and met with Jim Barnett and Ole Anderson and Jim Hurd. I gave them my speech. I love it here. I've learned so much this year and I'm really happy. My contract is coming up. I was at $1,200 and then this is where he corrects himself. I was trying to get $2,000. I said a month earlier. It was a week. $2,000 a week is what he wanted. He was making $1,200 a week beforehand. Ole was the first one to speak, and he's like, you know, kid, you're a great athlete, but no one is ever going to see you wrestle. But he's missed out want to see you wrestle. So.
Well, now that I found out how much he was making, I was making more money than he was. I was making $1,500, and then some weeks it'd jump up to $17. I don't know why. And the reason that being is because they booked me and then they didn't book me, and I threatened to sue them. Jim Hurd got on the phone and said, okay, he didn't want the lawsuit, so give me a job. And then Jim Barnett called me and said, my boy, we're gonna have you start and we'll pay you $15 a week. $15 a week was 40 years ago, or whatever it was, 35 years ago. That's a lot of money. I said, damn, that's good. So you get a hotel room for like $35. I mean, it was just a lot cheaper, and then the money was good. So, but Mark was making $1,200, which he said was the starting pay for newbie guys. And they had no, Ole was an old time guy. And he booked it the old time way, just tough guys. And he was probably one of the best. But when he looked at Taker and said, nobody's going to pay to see you wrestle, he was actually right. Because in his present version of Mark Calloway, or whatever his name was.
Mean Mark Callis.
Mean Mark. No, they couldn't. I don't think you could draw flies with him under that gimmick. And we used to stay at this hotel in a motel, but around Atlanta, close to the airport. And Mark told me, because I had him early on in his career, he actually left Memphis to go to Atlanta because of my conversation with Jim Cornette. So he told me that WWE is interested, and what should he do? And I says, well, go talk to him. And he asked me a long time, way before this, should he go to WCW or WWE? I said, go to WCW first. Let Vince see you on TV, and then have them get in contact with you. So he followed that formula. I don't know if he followed it because of me or he just did it. But I got him the job in WCW with Cornette one day, and he called Cornette back. Cornette, this was like a Wednesday. He started there the next Monday because they had an injury to I don't know, to the Spivey or Sid or somebody. They needed a big guy. Mm-hmm. So he started there, and it turned out in his favor because, and you've read stories. I don't know. Mark has never told me this, but he envisioned the Undertaker to be immortal and kind of fashioned it after himself. But whatever he did a great job with because he was over the first time he appeared. And I'm not saying it's his work, it was his gimmick and his music. Because he had two parts to a match. His entrance, which was, regal, fascinating. Just to sit there and watch it, and dong, and here he comes, and here comes the man who can't die, and he took his time too. His entrance was 5 minutes. That was part of it. Then he would have a match, and he would work within the parameters of what an Undertaker would actually do. He never did anything fast, wore the gloves, and, rest in peace. And it was perfect. And he left. And so Vince put the gimmick on him, thus proving only wrong and right at the same time. Mm. People would pay to see Mark under the right gimmick, and they found the right gimmick for him. As Mean Mark, yeah, he's just another wrestler. But as the gimmick Undertaker, and the only gimmick they've ever seen like that, it was perfect. And Paul Bearer matched it perfectly. Mm-hmm. Because Paul Bearer used to work in a funeral home.
Yeah. He
knew that, right?
He was a licensed mortician.
He sure was. Mm-hmm. And when I was booking Florida, I brought him in, and Michael Hayes told me, I said, what else does he do? He said, he's a mortician. I said, a what? He said, he's a mortician. I said, you got to be shitting me. I never heard of a mortician wanting to be in the wrestling business. So Paul was the only one, and I brought him in then. It was kind of the same gimmick, but without a really scary person. But if I'd have had an idea about an Undertaker, believe me, I'd have had one.
I'm going to follow up with a couple of things about this. First off, did the Undertaker, or Mark Calloway, the real person, did he, as far as you know, actually like his time in WCW before, obviously, this contract stuff came up?
Well, he didn't know any different. He was just getting started. So he's going to give it time to season himself, for them to get used to him. And I don't think he hated his time there. I don't think he was overly fond of it. But he found his home when he found Vince, and Vince took him the whole way. So WCW served a purpose and a stepping stone for The Undertaker, or for Mark Calloway, Mark Callis, or Mean Mark, or whatever name they had him on, served as a stepping stone, which is how most guys, finally worked their way up. But back in those days, he had worked in Texas, he had worked in Memphis. I think he told me he worked in South Africa, which is a territory we've never talked about, because I never went there, nor did I ever want to go there. That's the other end of the world. I'm not going. You couldn't have melted me and poured me on a plane for South Africa. I wasn't going. I don't care how much money they wanted to give me. But I think that was the only territories he had ever worked. And I'm not saying he's lucky. He's fortunate. He's fortunate that he's 6'9" and Vince found him first.
Also, because we were talking about $1,200 a week, not a month, a week. And can you talk to me about the WCW contracts at the time? So we know these days in WWE there's a downside guarantee, and you have the potential to make, millions more than it if character and merchandise take off, that kind of thing. So you said you were on $1,500 a week Sometimes it would go to 1,700. Would that just be because the houses were up, or did it
something like that? No reason. It was just there. I didn't even ever go by. I said, "Why did it jump?" No, I'd have went to him if it had jumped down to 11. I went, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" It dropped, but it went up, so I didn't say nothing. So what was your question?
That's pretty much it. I just want to know the sort of the contract that you signed. So was the basically your pay was going to be where it was going to be?
$1,500 a week, no matter how many bookings.
Yes.
And that was what it was as the downside. And I actually did an announcing job that I didn't get paid for because, hell, I'm learning too. So that announcing job should have been worth $1,000, but I didn't go ask for it. So just keep the low profile, make your money, because this was when the business was dying. It was dying all over. You either worked in WCW or WWE. Otherwise, you didn't make any money. So keep the low profile, keep the money moving. So.
Now, you mentioned the word downside, then that's what I was getting at. Was it a downside, or was that, if you were in the main event, your money would have stayed the same, essentially?
Yeah, I never was in the main event, so I don't know. But see, if I was in the main event and I was pushed up the card, I would have brought that up if they wanted to. I stayed there, I think, 18 months, almost 2 years, maybe. And I got the announcing job just by accident. I just mentioned to Oli, I said, "When are you going to put me out there on the mic with Tony Schiavone?" He said, "I don't know. When you learn to talk, you stupid son of a bitch." That's the way he talked to you. That's the way he talked to me. Well, that's the way he talked to everybody. Everybody was a stupid son of a bitch, a dumb son of a bitch. But that was Oli. So you just went with it. So, and I told the story last week. He walked up to me and said, "I can fire you. I can't fire Luger. I can't fire this other guy said, I can't fire, but I can fire you." So, and he was kidding because I never got fired. I hope he was kidding anyway. But yeah, it stayed the same, basically. Now, WWE, you want to know about a WWE contract I signed the first time?
We've covered
this
one.
Oh, man, it was nothing. It was, I could have made more money working at Dairy Queen. You were guaranteed. And this was when, I mean, if they used you, yeah, you'd make money. But he didn't sign contract and no downsides. They wanted you to sign contracts, which I eventually ended up signing. I had to stay there because I was making, but they only guaranteed you $150 a year. I went, "What?" He said, "Now you can go and fight it in court, but hell, over honor, just go with it." And they guaranteed you 10 bookings or 15 bookings a year. That's it. And see, the power was, they had all the power. So, I mean, I wasn't the $1 million baby, so I didn't have a lawyer looking at it. I just looked at it myself. And when I threatened to sue him, I went to this lawyer and I asked him how much he would do to ask him to, I want him to send a letter to Jim Hurt at WCW. He said $100. I said, how about 50? He said, okay, 50. And so he sent it. And I had just met this lawyer. I just walked in his office one day. I didn't even know who he was. And he called me and said, "All right, they won't talk to you about the contract." I said, "Well, damn, the legal system does work." So